what it was like to see King Tut's tomb just after it was opened. Maynard Owen Williams was National Geographic's first foreign correspondent, and in 1923 he was on hand for an event the entire world was eagerly anticipating, the opening of King Tut's burial chamber. Archaeologists remove objects from the tomb of Tutankhamun. Story and photographs by Maynard Owen Williams. October 14, 2025. This story originally published in the May 1923 issue of National Geographic magazine. See more digitized stories from our archives here. Probably no great graveyard occupies so unusual a site as the tombs of the Egyptian kings at Thebes. Across the Nile from the Temple of Karnak, the western skyline is broken by rough limestone cliffs whose color varies from hour to hour. Nature here changes her complexion with the passing of the day, now softly seductive under a filmy veil before the footlights of the sun's first-level rays, now savagely sharp under the fierce floodlight of noonday, now darkly mysterious beneath the glowing evening sky. The monotony of rich fields so familiar in the flat delta of Lower Egypt here gives way to the variety of barren waste where tomb robbers and scientists have sought so long the hiding places of the pharaohs. 10,000 tourists have tramped above the spot where the latest find has just been made. Other archaeologists, looking for the needle entrance to the royal tomb of Tutankhamun in the limestone haystack of El Khorn, came within a few feet of where, after 16 years of labor, the late Lord Carnarvon and Mr. Howard Carter found their reward. Map by A. H. Bumstead. Map from 1923 article. A pile of empty mineral water bottles, just across the narrow road, marks the spot where Theodore M. Davis and Arthur Weigall, after discovering the tomb of Queen T, also spelled Tea, Tai, and Tay, stopped work. Almost in a straight line beyond is the tomb of Horemheb, successor to Tutankhamun, to enter which they hurdled the hidden entrance to the greatest treasure house that archaeologists have ever entered, centuries after grave robbers had fled in fear. Both in the realm of space and time, the American excavator, Mr. Davis, to whom so many discoveries are due, bracketed the tomb which holds the center of the stage today. Tutankhamun was the king who came back to the fold of Amun, god of Thebes, and re-established the royal residence there, after his father-in-law, Akhenaten, or Amenophis IV, also spelled Amenhotep, having made a spectacular break with the powerful priesthood, moved his capital to Tel El Amarna. In gratitude for this return, which ushered into Thebes the glories of Seti I and Ramesses II and conserved the spiritual hegemony of the local priests until they could seize temporal power as well, King Tutankhamun was sent out on his journey through the underworld equipped with such funeral vessels and mortuary implements as have never before been discovered. Who was King Tut, the teen pharaoh who captivated? It is unlikely that the comparatively small tomb itself will have more than a passing interest, but the rich store of rare and valuable funeral furniture with which the hiding place of Tutankhamun was packed almost surely contains such wonders from the distant past as have never before been seen by modern man. On February 17 I arrived in Luxor, crossed the river and started on foot for the tombs of the kings. It is nearly 11 years since I last visited them, but my memory of the event is vivid. I still feel that September sun which beat upon us as we climbed the ridge on the way to Deir el-Bahri and collapsed in the shade of an ancient temple to gulp down great gullas of Nile water after the water in our bottles was gone. I still remember the fake curios we bought, the hagglings we had, the smell of the hot donkey sweat under the saddles. This time I did not hasten toward my goal. I wanted to plod along on foot, to exchange Arabic salutations with the white-toothed village girls, to feel the African sun on my back, and to watch the camels stalk by on their way to the cane fields. Travelers ride through flooded area along the Nile River. Approaching the valley of the tombs on foot. The morning freshness was still in the air. Gangs of prisoners were grading and watering the road which Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth of Belgium would use on the morrow, when she came to pay the first royal visit to Tutankhamun in more than 30 centuries. But I did not keep to the winding way, made smooth for automobiles, which glides a chalk-white serpent trail between the tawny hills. Beyond green fields which I had last passed over in a boat, I saw the colossi of Memnon and I made for them. I wanted to pass the many lesser gaping tomb mouths before I finally came to the royal tombs behind the limestone ridge. Camels and oxen were slowly turning the awkward sakyas and bringing full water jars to the top of the loop to empty their precious burdens in mud troughs, protected by woven mats, from which they were carried out to the thirsty fields. As I passed through a mud-walled village, with its narrow alleys almost black under that hot light which lacks reflective power, a girl of 10 or so stopped stripping sugar cane with her gleaming teeth to wish that my day be blessed and to offer to share her store. Across the narrow opening of the street an inky form glided by with a water jar upon her head. A turtle dove sat on the wall and cooed. A small child, with a scarlet robe and shiny decorations on her headdress, leaped into a square of light and then faded away into the almost tangible shadow. Lying prone in the thick dust of the road, an unpedigreed pup diverted the traffic of the day. Entrance to the tomb of Amenophis III in the Western Valley. The landing place for tourists en route to the tomb of Tutankhamun. I stopped for lunch at the rest house near the temple, which was built by Hatshepsut, the sister, wife, and queen of Thothmes II, also spelled Thutmose and Thutmosis. In the valley a string of tip cars was dumping rubbish down the steep slope. On the side of the wall which forms a thin partition between this ravine and the amphitheater of the King's tombs hundreds of men and boys were working for the Metropolitan Museum of New York. They stopped to eat their meager lunches amid the piles of dirt where they had toiled. In the courtyard of the rest house a clever sleight-of-hand artist spread his cloth, arranged his shining cups, made his tiny chickens peep, and passed a wedding ring from inside a close-held handkerchief onto a stick, both ends of which were tightly clutched by his astonished spectators. Waiting at the tomb. The noonday sun was hot and getting hotter. I shouldered my heavy camera and started up the steep path. Thus should one approach that hell-hole in the hills where the greatest pharaohs hid themselves and where not more than 2 or 3 still lie undisturbed by modern man. As I passed the tomb of Seti I and turned toward the lower entrance of the valley, I saw below me a small white tent, a wooden shelter for the armed guard, the clutter of lumber which archaeologists use, and the new wall of irregular stones which hid the entrance to Tutankhamun's mausoleum. How was King Tut's tomb discovered 100 years ago? Grit and luck. Workers remove objects from the tomb of Tutankhamun. 2 correspondents sat there and another roamed about waiting for news. For weeks they had waited under the glare of the sun, compelled by the force of circumstances to be detectives rather than scribes. Suddenly and without warning some wondrous treasure would be brought forth in its rough but easy-riding ambulance, to be rushed to another tomb which was used as storehouse and preserving laboratory. Now and then some rumor would escape the portals, to be weighed and considered before it was put upon the telegraph wire or in the discard. A press photographer was there, wearing a tarbush to render himself less conspicuous among Moslem crowds. If it had not been so bright he could have used his nose for a red light in the dark room, and on his cheeks he was raising skin as the farmers of Sichuan raise crops, with new growth showing between the older ones, which were ready to harvest. These were the men who were trying to give the news of this great discovery to the world.